Thanks for joining me again on one of the world's most iconic photography locations. I've got another action-packed show lined up for you, so let's go. Coming up on this month's show, we join pro photographer James McCormick as he documents one of London's best kept secrets. We kick off our ambitious Mission Possible series, and we continue our countdown of our top 10 views on Skye. Welcome to our February edition of Photography Online, coming to you this month from a tranquil Scottish woodland setting, having only just thawed out from last month's show. The reaction to our first show, by the way, has been amazing, so thank you so much for all your support. If you missed it, you can of course still check it out on our Photography Online YouTube channel. Now, every month we are bringing you a photography quote, and this month's comes from the legend himself, Ansel Adams, who once said, "A good photograph is knowing where to stand." With that in mind, later on in the show we're going to be looking at viewpoint, one of the most important aspects of your photography. But let's get things kicked off with our first feature on location, where we're following a London-based commercial photographer as he undertakes a personal project in his local area.
Wherever you live, anywhere in the world, there will always be an ideal photography project to undertake right on your own doorstep. Whatever you choose as a photographic subject, it's best to pick something which interests you, as this will give you more incentive and enthusiasm to see it through to completion. In my case, I wanted to document the wildlife I see on a daily basis as I walk the dog in my local park. As this changes so much throughout the year, I knew it would be a minimum of a 12-month project, so it was a big undertaking, but one which I was determined to complete. Your project doesn't have to be such a commitment, but regardless of whether it is several years or several hours in duration, one thing you need to make sure is that you don't put yourself under too much pressure to begin with. Don't rush out and take loads of photos right at the start. Force yourself to slow down a bit and try to get a comprehensive understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve. Before you even take a picture, it's great to get to know an area. This is my local patch, my local park, and I've been walking here with dogs for over 20 years, and I know every nook and cranny of this particular area. This was key, as had I just arrived somewhere unfamiliar and just started snapping away, I wouldn't have been able to capture a character or piece of behaviour I hadn't yet become aware of. For example, these shots were only possible because I had built up knowledge of where these owls and this kestrel regularly roost. Regardless of the season, dawn is a great time to take photos, not only because the light is often at its best, but there are fewer people around, and as a result, more wildlife. Personal projects are all about developing your own personal style, varying techniques, experimenting, using different focal lengths, different lenses, and seeing where your photography goes. Planning is also key, as each time you go out to take shots, you have to have a target as to what you want to achieve. Sometimes this might be ambitious, in which case you need to be prepared to try many times and on many different occasions before you are finally successful. But at other times your target might be less ambitious, in which case you can probably get the shot in one visit, working with the conditions you find. Many of the shots I've taken over the year might appear to be amazingly ambitious, but if you know your subject and can predict what it's going to do, then you're over halfway there. Being in the right place at the right time is critical. None of the shots you see here are grab shots. Each one was planned, and I often had to try on many different occasions before I got a final image I was happy with. For example, right now in autumn time, I know these chestnuts fall to the ground and are harvested by jays, magpies, jackdaws and particular deer that come in here to feed upon them, which means I can predict what's going to be happening, and then I can make a plan for it and work around the weather and varying other factors to get the image that I really want. One important aspect of having a project is to have an end goal. There is no point in just taking photos for the sake of it, otherwise you won't be compelled to get out of bed on that cold and wild and windy morning. In my case it was to publish a book, giving readers a glimpse of the characters and world I see every morning whilst walking my dog. Setting yourself a project is a great way to incentivise your photography, but it doesn't have to be as involved as making a book. Shooting images for a calendar is a far more achievable goal, as obviously you would only need 12. For example, your project could be themed on an urban environment. You can still access pockets of wildlife in these areas if this is what interests you more. All the shots I've shown you here have been taken within sight of the very centre of London, right under the flight path of one of the world's busiest airports. I'm still putting the final and finishing touches to my book, but for me it's been the perfect personal project, as I chose a topic that I was passionate about and in a venue which I could access easily and daily. For me, this particular project was not about taking more pictures. As a working photographer, I take far too many pictures every day as it is. It was all about taking images and creating a project that I wanted to do, a subject matter that I was interested in. One of the problems that a non-professional photographer has is the actual reason to take a picture. Why are you taking a picture? Personal projects are a great way to incentivise you to get up in the morning, get out and about and start taking more pictures. And that is the greatest way to enjoy your photography and the best way to learn.
Thanks, James. I love that. I think the idea of a personal project is just what a lot of us need to get out there with our cameras. Now, in the upcoming months, we're looking to start a brand new feature here on the show called the Photography Online Surgery, where our experts try and give your photography a clean bill of health. To be involved, you can send in images for critiquing, or you can send in any questions you want answered. There are links in the description below on just how to do this. Just press the Show More tab, or if you're using a phone or a tablet, press this arrow. Speaking of new features, this month we're kickstarting a new series we like to call Mission Possible. It's all about realising those epic or ambitious shots that you've maybe always thought about but never quite got around to making happen. This month, Marcus drags me through a boggy field to explain one such idea he has in mind.
Okay, so this is why we're here. If you look up there on the skyline, see that tree?
I do.
I was driving along the road, well, several times, and I've always looked up and seen that tree, and it's just because of its isolation and its position. It's crying out to be photographed, but it needs something else to it. And one day I came down and the moon was up there, way off to the right.
Okay.
I thought if the moon had been behind that tree, then that would be a shot. And it will probably happen at some point, it's just working out when it will be. So we need to find the perfect location and then work out, take a bearing from where we are to the tree, and then we can go and look online and see when the moon will be behind it in that position. So we'll walk through here and we'll go and try and get as far back as we can. Right, so if we start about here, We can't obviously go any further left because otherwise we'll lose it behind the trees. If you just hold that for a minute, I'm going to get this set up. So there's our tree. The first thing we need to do is just check what focal length we need. So can you see how big the tree is on the frame there? So when you look with your eyes, it's quite small, but because we've got such a long lens, it's taking up, I don't know, a quarter of the frame. But the moon is going to be much bigger than that tree. So when the moon comes up, it's going to be kind of that size there, I would imagine. So it will look very dramatic, and you'll just get the silhouette of the tree in front of the moon. So it's got the potential to be a fantastic shot. So the next thing we need to do is get a compass reading on that tree. This will take a little while to calibrate itself, but I'm pointing the phone straight down the axis of the lens there. So that there, from where we are, that's saying 41 degrees, which that's just not going to happen. That would mean we'd need the moon to be rising at about 25 degrees in order to get that high. We need to cheat this angle then. We need to go as far as we can that way to try and get that angle up nearer, well, certainly above 50 to stand an outside chance.
Otherwise it's mission impossible.
No, we're going to make this work. Somehow we're going to make it work. Right, let's go and have a look over here then.
All right.
The further back this way we go, the lower the tree appears in the horizon. So, you know, earlier on we were saying it's between 15 and 20. If we go back far enough, that will be below 15, and the lower we can get it, the better as well. But obviously all the time we're getting further and further away from it. So it's going to be getting smaller and smaller in the frame, which means it will be smaller in comparison to the moon, but there'll be a point where it becomes so small that it starts getting detrimental. Are your feet still dry?
Definitely not.
Well, that's good, because you've got nothing to lose then here. Oh look, it looks fantastic from here.
Oh, it does.
You can see right to the bottom of the tree.
And this might be a silly question, but is there any reason you can't just go up to it and, you know, get a shot from closer up rather than coming down here?
Of the tree?
Yeah.
Yes, because the reason why we're all the way back here is because we want to use a really long lens, because we're 250,000 miles away from the moon. It doesn't matter whether we're standing here or up on that hill, we're still 250,000 miles away. So the moon doesn't get bigger and smaller as you walk closer to the tree, but the tree gets bigger and smaller.
Okay.
So if we go close to that tree, in order to fit the tree into the frame, we're going to have to use a much wider angle lens, and then use a much wider angle lens and the moon becomes tiny.
Okay.
So we want the moon to be much bigger than the tree, so that's why we've had to come so far back. So I don't know, it's impossible to tell how far away that tree is, but it's probably between 1.5 and 2 kilometres away. But this will give us the right size moon. So let's just take a shot for reference anyway while we're here. Come all this way and see how much this camera's the image moving.
Yeah.
I'm only tapping that really because the lens is so long that it's magnifying all the movements.
So it needs to be a still night as well as...
Yeah, if it's windy, then yeah, forget it. Because there won't be a lot of light around, so the shutter speed is going to typically be about 1/200th of a second. So if it's windy and the camera's doing that in the wind, then that's not going to be any good as well. So you're just narrowing down the odds here, aren't you? I'm
trying to, yeah. Trying to avoid coming back, going through the bog.
So you want the composition somewhere around there. So I'm going to put the timer on now. It's 1/640th of a second. I'm going to put the timer on because I don't want to be touching the camera when I take the shot. So there's our shot. So let's just zoom in on it and just check it is sharp. But it should be. It's a nice looking tree, huh?
Yeah, it is a nice looking tree.
So you imagine the moon so big behind that. I mean, the moon would actually take up all the frame there, and you just see the craters and the detail on it. So
that would make for a spectacular shot.
Yeah. So that's why we're here. So we've envisaged the shot. We've got an idea of what we want to get. Now we just need to achieve it. And
now we just need all the conditions to fall into place.
Yeah, that's what Mission Possible is all about. And you know, if this was easy, then you know it wouldn't be a challenge, would it? But this is a very, very challenging shot because you need all the elements to come together at the same time. But if we're patient enough, we'll get it. So the last thing to do before we go is we need to mark our position. and take a photo of it, just so that
Giant cross?
No, I'm talking about on my phone here. So the phone will find where we are. So that's exactly where we are now. So if I take a picture of that, just so that later on we know exactly where we were standing. Not so that we know where to come back to, but so when we look at the photographer's ephemeris online, we can see exactly what angle we need to.
What is the photographer's ephemeris?
Good job you asked, because that's where we're going now.
Okay.
Okay, let's go.
Now if, like me, you'd never heard of the photographer's ephemeris, stick around. Later on in the show, Marcus is going to be showing me just what a useful tool it can be. Now we started the show off with a quote from Ansel Adams: "A good photograph is knowing where to stand," but there's a bit more to it than you might think. We sent Harry off to Ellendon Castle, one of Scotland's most iconic castles, to talk us through this most important part of the photo taking process.
Today I'm going to talk you through something called viewpoint. Now viewpoint is the most important element of composition, but it's also something that often gets overlooked. What do I mean by viewpoint? Well, it's the exact position of the camera. Now it's important that we get this as right as we can while we're shooting, because it's one of the few things that we can't change in post-processing. Viewpoint deserves investing as much time as possible. If we get our viewpoint right, then all the other compositional elements should fall into place really easily.
Whoa!
When trying to identify the best viewpoint for our subject, we want to work in 3 dimensions. So firstly, we want to try and find the best angle on our subject. Then we want to find the best distance. And finally, work out the best height to shoot from. So it's not really working that well from here. We're a little too flat on, and the line of the mountains is kind of interfering with the outline of the castle at the moment. So we can do one of 2 things. We can either get closer to the castle, that would involve some slippery seaweed and an inevitable fall, or we can go further away. So I think I'll try that one. So I've only come about 100 meters from my original position there. I've come literally as far as I can in this without falling off into the water. Now, it's almost working, but at the moment I've got a really nice line above the castle there, bar one tiny little convergence with the chimney and the top of the mountain. So we're going to try and find another spot. An easy mistake to make is getting too close to your subject. Here, the castle's right up into the sky, and though it looks quite dramatic to our eyes, it doesn't really work as a photograph. Ideally, we want to show this within the amazing surroundings that we've got here. So, we're going to go further away and see if we can show the mountains and the hills above the castle. So I've invested a really good amount of time exploring all the viewpoints at ground level around the castle here, within reason. I haven't got in the water yet. I'll maybe save that for the summer months. So I'm pretty confident that this is the best viewpoint that I can get. Now, the reason for that is that, as you can see behind me, one, we've got quite a nice reflection today. It's nice and calm, but crucially, the castle sits below the mountains. So we've got a nice outline up above it, and we can also see daylight through the arches of the bridge here as well. Once you've figured out your best angle and your best distance, we need to figure out the best height at which to photograph our viewpoint from. Now, if you're using a telephoto lens, height kind of becomes irrelevant, as we don't tend to include anything close to the camera. If we're using a wide angle lens, however, our height becomes quite important. As from eye level, we won't include much of the foreground, but at ground level it becomes much more apparent. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one shot from eye level, and then by crouching down, you will see that the foreground becomes a much stronger part of this image. So I'm reasonably confident that I found the best viewpoint down here, but as you might notice, I've got a great big hill behind me. That might allow me to get some elevation and to get a slightly more unusual viewpoint down onto the castle. So let's go have a look now. As you can see, it does work quite nicely. Importantly, we're up high enough so that we can see water all the way around to the top of the castle. If we were down any lower than this, then we would have the top of the castle clipping into the bottom of the hill, just up behind it there. Another advantage of our elevated viewpoint is that we get a much better sense of the setting around the castle, which makes it so photogenic. Now, once you're confident that you've found the very best viewpoint for whatever subject you've chosen, you can move on to focusing on all the other elements within your photograph. We'll be covering these in future episodes of Essential Camera Skills, so make sure you like and subscribe to Photography Online to make sure you never miss another episode.
Thanks, Harry. As you can see, understanding viewpoint is very simple. It doesn't matter whether you're using a large format camera like Ansel Adams did, or just a mobile phone. The exact same principles apply. It's all about slowing down and exploring all the options before taking that shot. Now it's time for this month's 60-second editing skills. This is the part where our Photography Online experts have just 1 minute to explain some of their favourite editing techniques. Last month, Marcus came in right on the bell. This month, let's see if Nick can be just as good with his timekeeping.
This month, I'm going to show you how to apply a graduated filter in Lightroom. So here I have an image where in the field I didn't actually need to use a graduated filter because all the detail was retained within the dynamic range of my camera. However, the sky is a little bit too bright for my liking, so I'm going to apply the graduated filter in Lightroom. So to do this, we go up to the toolbar, which is just below our histogram, and we select the fourth icon along, which is a rectangular shape and looks like a filter. So once we're over in the image, you will see our cursor has now changed to a crosshair. All we need to do now is click and hold the left mouse button to where we want to start the filter, and then drag all the way down to where we want the filter to end. Now on the screen you will see we have 3 lines. Anything that sits above the top line will be affected 100% by the settings we have on the right here. Anything below the bottom line will have no effect whatsoever. The distance between the top line and the bottom line is the fade, from 100% to 0%. Now if I widen that distance, you will see we have a much softer gradient. If I close that distance up, we have a much harder gradient. Now to see the area affected by this filter, all you need to do is move your cursor over the center circle here, and the screen will turn to red, showing the affected area like so. Now, there's a lot more we can do with graduated filters in Lightroom, but that's another time. For now, my 60 seconds is up.
Well, these guys aren't leaving much room for improvement. Thanks, Nick, and no pressure, Harry. Now, continuing on with our top 10 locations of Skye series, last month we visited a location right next to the road. Glad I got to do that one. This month we need to venture a little further afield.
Number 9 on our top 10 list of views on Skye is the lesser-known location of Ruahoonish, or Hoonish Point. Located right in the very north of the island, it requires about a 45-minute hike to access. There are a few routes you can take to get here, but the easiest to follow is by parking in the small designated car park on the road to Shoelister. Turn off the A855 at the phone box and you'll see the car park round the next bend.
This is the furthest north you can drive in Skye, but you can actually go further north, but you need to walk there. Luckily there's a footpath just over here leading exactly where we want to go. Let's go.
The trail can be very muddy and boggy in places, especially if there's been lots of recent rain, so make sure you have suitable footwear. The path is otherwise good and is mostly flat for the first mile, until you reach a gate. From here, it gets a little steeper, but nothing too strenuous.
So although we can't see it from here, we're heading to the tallest point on the horizon, and when we get up there we'll find something quite interesting.
This building is the most northerly building on Skye and was originally a Coast Guard lookout hut, giving 180-degree views over the water around the north of the island.
Standing here and panning around the horizon, you've got the Isle of Harris over to the west, you have the Isle of Lewis to the north, and you can see mainland Scotland to the east. This is the very definition of a panoramic view.
Once you've had your fill of views from the lookout hut, this location is far from over. In fact, things are about to get a lot better.
Although it doesn't look like it from here, it's actually quite easy to get down to that lower peninsula over there, and that's where we're going to go to see the number 9 viewpoint on our top 10 list.
Following the cliff top to the west will lead you down into a shallow ravine. At the far side of this ravine is a gate next to a rock.
From here the path gets a little steep, so you want to have at least one hand free to grab hold of rocks, so I'm just going to put my camera back in my bag to give me that free hand.
From here, a steep but easy to navigate path zigzags down the cliff face, eventually bringing you out at the base of the cliffs. Once down on flat ground, it's time to explore this seldom visited peninsula. One of my favourite shots to take in this area is the sea stack, which can be perfectly framed by the foreground. I love the shape of this rock. It looks like something out of Thunderbirds. When the waves are crashing around its base, a long exposure can create some dramatic and atmospheric effects. Heading a little further around the coast reveals a sea arch which during the summer months is nesting with seabirds such as fulmar, shags and kittiwakes. A view from here back towards the cliffs is well worth taking before moving on.
This is the most northerly point of Skye. I can safely say that there's no one on Skye that's further north than I am right now.
Although the coastal views are very special, it's the view from the middle of the peninsula that we've really come to see.
So this is it, viewpoint number 9. The reason why I love this so much is because it's so untypical of Skye. It looks more like Australia or New Zealand, or maybe even somewhere in South Africa.
If you want to take the best photos here, you need to time your arrival with the end of the day when the setting sun out over the Outer Hebrides will illuminate the cliff face, which can often take on an orange or a red hue. If you get calm conditions to allow a reflection to be had on the water, then you'll be rewarded with an amazing image. Be aware that staying here until sunset will mean walking back in the dark, so make sure you bring a good head torch with fresh batteries. You could of course consider sleeping in the bothy, which will put you in the perfect location to watch the sunrise in just a few hours.
If you do find yourself in remote locations in the dark, then next month we're going to be speaking to Scotland's leading expert on outdoor safety as she tells us how to keep safe when you're out in the hills. If you want more information on places like Grohunish, then don't forget we've got this. It's the Photographer's Guide to Skye, which contains information on the top 50 locations and is available in both hardback and digital download. Just follow the link in the description to the video. Now earlier on in the show, Marcus talked me through an idea he has for a photo, which quite frankly is stupidly ambitious, and as we're about to see, might take a very long time to achieve.
So I said that I would show you the photographer's ephemeris.
Yes, please.
Okay, so there we go, that one there. And basically, when you're on the home page, it gives you lots of options. So we'll click on the Open Web app, which is the free version. So what we've got is a pin here showing my location, but you can move this around anywhere you want to, but we'll leave it there for now. And basically you've got all these different lines. So this yellow line shows you the angle of the sunrise, and it tells you down here sunrise is at 6:08 at 69 degrees. So this is for today's date, which is August the 26th. If you want to choose a different date, then you can just click through this. And what you can see is as I'm clicking through the different dates, you see the angle of the light changing. Yeah. And if you go all the way down to the end of the year, this is sunset,
this is sunrise, so the further towards the end of December you go, the closer these two are going to come to each other towards the south, which is why the days are so short and the nights are so long. So what we want to do is we want to find a date when the moon is going to be in the sky at 65 degrees, because you remember when we were on location I took a couple of screenshots on my phone. So from our position pointing directly at the tree, my phone said it was 65 degrees. Whether that's accurate or not we won't know until we turn up and do a trial and error, but that's all we can go on at the moment. So we're looking for a date and a time when the moon is at 65 degrees and about 10 degrees above the horizon. Now, I've already done a bit of cheating here to save going through day by day. January the 9th next year, so you can see the moon is rising at 44 degrees. So it's way further round to the left than we need it, but obviously that's when it's on the horizon, so we wouldn't even see it here because there's a big hill in the way. And as you can see, as we're moving the timeline forward, the moon is moving around. We want it to be 65 degrees. So there it's 65 degrees, and that puts it at 10 degrees or 10.5 degrees above the horizon. So that could be perfect. All we can do is go there on January the 9th and have a look and see if the moon's too high, too low, too far to the left, too far to the right, and then at least we'll have a bearing on where it needs to be. So if we miss this date, I've gone through, the next day is okay on the 10th, so we've got 2 chances of it on January the 9th and 10th. Then nothing until February the 7th or the 8th. So if January the 9th and 10th are completely cloudy and we're none the wiser after going there, we can go there the following month, and then it doesn't happen again till December. Because this is basically a winter thing. The moon never rises that far to the north during the summer. If that's still too low, let's just say the tree is 65 degrees and it's 12 degrees above the horizon. We're going to have to wait 2 more years. So there's something called a lunar standstill, which it only happens every 12 or 13 years. And that's when the moon rises further to the north than any other time. And that's not going to happen until 2023. So we'll start with those dates and see how we get on. But this could turn into a 3 or 4 year project.
Definitely long term.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just trial and error at the moment, and we'll see how we get on.
Fabulous. Keep watching to see what happens when we make attempt number 1. Now, if it does take us till December 2023, hopefully it won't, but if it does, to make that shot, who knows what camera will be taking it on. Already in 2020, Canon and Nikon have made some big announcements about brand new DSLRs. Canon's flagship camera, the 1DX Mark III, is about to hit the shops, but is available for pre-order now, and Nikon's latest full-frame offering in the D780 also looks like it will be in demand. We hope to be testing both cameras in future episodes, which brings us on aptly to this month's Kit Corner.
This is the world's first 10 times telephoto zoom. Telephoto zoom. Telephoto zoom. For DSLRs which reaches 600mm. It's a...
Hang on, can we just do this in my normal voice, please? As I was saying, this is a Sigma 60 to 600mm, f4.5 to 6.3. It's got a whopping focal length all the way from 60mm, which is roughly what our eyes see, all the way through to 600mm to pull in the most distant of subjects. Although it's from Sigma's sports lineup of lenses, that doesn't just mean you have to shoot healthy people clad in Lycra. It's the ideal lens for wildlife photography too, because you can't always predict how close you're going to get to your subject. There's been many occasions when I've been out photographing otters, when I've been shooting with, say, a 500mm lens, and the otters have ended up way too close for me to even focus on them. So being able to zoom out to 100mm, even to 60mm, is a really big advantage. This is also the ideal lens for shooting other distant subjects, such as airplanes at air shows, the moon, or even solar eclipses. Talking of the moon, this lens has got so many buttons, dials and switches, it'll keep even an astronaut occupied. To start off with, we've got 3 different focus settings. So we've got full autofocus, we've got a really useful manual override setting, and then a purely manual focus setting. We can also limit the distances that the lens focuses on. So we can keep it at full, or we can limit it from 6 meters to infinity, or we can limit it from the closest distance to 6 meters. Now that's useful because if we're only photographing something that's very far away, then being able to focus at just those far distances means we'll be able to focus far quicker and minimize any focus hunting. We also have 2 stabilization modes, 1 for general use and 2 for panning. We've also then got a whole series of custom presets, which we can pre-program using the Sigma USB dock. The lens also has a lock switch on the zoom. That means that we can lock the lens out at different focal lengths. That's really useful for if we pointed the lens straight up, for example, without a lock on, it's just going to slide all the way back in. But if we lock it out, job's a good one. Also slips off when we turn the focus ring, and that just means we've got different options for when we're zooming. If you're a traditionalist, you can use that to zoom in and out like that. If you're a trombone player, give it an old push-pull. I've been testing this lens on a variety of wildlife subjects. Let's have a look at what I got. First off, I tried a slow moving subject, such as this water rail strolling across the ice. Taken at the maximum 600mm, the lens had no problem in locking onto the subject and resulted in a really lovely, crisp, sharp image. Retreating into the thick of the reeds, this made autofocus nearly impossible. Luckily, the lens has a manual override, which allowed me to grab a sharp image of the rail surrounded by vegetation. The next level up was to try some fast-moving subjects. These geese in flight proved no problem, and I was really impressed with how quickly the lens found focus and tracked them through the air. Something slightly trickier was a duck splashing around in water. As a mix of tones throws up challenges for autofocus, once again I didn't have a problem getting sharp images. Having tested the telephoto end of the lens, I was keen to try out the wider angle focal lengths by getting up close, very close, with my subject. I wasn't expecting great things from the shorter end, but once again was really impressed with the sharpness and versatility of the lens. So let's start off with the positives first. Really, for a lens of its size, it's a really nice compact shape. I liked the image quality. It's really quite a nice sharp lens, and it focused quickly. I also really liked the fact that we've got a built-in Arca Swiss plate on the tripod collar. That means we don't have to faff around with putting on extra plates when we just want to put it on a gimbal head. Now, there are going to be things I didn't like. I'm not a big fan of the lens hood. For me, it actually isn't quite big enough. It doesn't really cover the front of the lens if you're out shooting in rain. I also think it's slightly overcomplicated. We've got a lot of switches and all these presets and things. I'm never going to faff around with any of that. Another downside, it does go to f6.3. Now, obviously, if we wanted something wider than that, we're going to be spending a heck of a lot more money. So I think for the amount it costs, it's very good value. So I'd like to leave you with a final thought. Although this is quite a heavy lens, it's 2.9 kilograms with the lens and the hood attached, it could actually end up saving you space and weight in your bag. How does that work? Well, if you're already using a couple of lenses like a 70-200 and 100-400, or maybe a 300mm prime, all of those focal lengths are covered by this lens. So you could get rid of those and just have this. For a lens of its price as well, it's available for about £1,700 in the UK. I think it offers really good value. So if you're in the market for a big zoom, I definitely think the Sigma 60-600mm is worth considering.
And this is the lens here, which sadly has to go back to Sigma this week, but not before I get a chance to play with it, hopefully. I reckon I can skip the gym this week. Now let's head back to the middle of a field to see if we can line up 3 objects with a mere 240,000 miles between them at a specific time of day with no wind, oh, and a clear view through the clouds. What could possibly go wrong?
So here we are, it's the 9th of January and we've waited for this day for 6 months now.
Long time, yes.
So the weather's looking 50-50, I would say. there's quite a bit of blue sky. We basically need a clear patch up in that direction.
Yeah.
So we'll wander to our spot that we found last time. We'll assess the situation. So just to put this into perspective, I've done this similar kind of thing before, where I got a friend of mine to stand on a hillside about 2 kilometers away from the camera, and I had the moon rising behind him. But that was much easier because out of the 3 things, you got the moon, my friend, and the camera. I had the ability to move 2 of those things. Obviously I can't move the moon, but I could move myself, and I could also move my friend, and of course managed to get that pretty easily. But what we've got to do today is slightly more ambitious, because we've got 3 objects, the camera, the moon and the tree. We can't obviously move the tree, we can't move the moon, and we're very limited to how we can move the camera as well.
Yeah, so I mean, this is our first attempt. What do you reckon the chances are of getting it today?
Well, if you look at the sky, I'd say we've got 50% cloud cover, but then we've got the slightly bigger task of getting the moon in the right place. Now, last time we were here, we calculated that the tree was a 65-degree bearing, and about 10 degrees above the horizon. Exactly 4:22 today is when the moon is going to be at 65 degrees and 10 degrees above the horizon. So it's just a case of whether we're good with our estimations or not.
So the moon rises and is in the right position at 4:22. I mean, what time is it now? How long have we got?
It's 20 to 4 now, so we've got 40 minutes to get in position. So we were just over here, I think.
This looks familiar.
And oh look, there's the tree. It's good to see that no one's chopped it down. It's kind of half expecting a rival photographer to have come with a chainsaw and lopped it off. That'd be a good trick, wouldn't it?
That would not be good.
Right, so let's set up camp here.
This tripod?
Yeah, thank you. So I looked it up, and guess when the last time the moon was 65 degrees from north and 10 degrees above the horizon?
I'm guessing years.
10 years.
10 years.
So tonight is the first time in 10 years that it's happened, on a full moon. That is. It happens quite regularly on other phases of the moon, but not on the full moon.
And that wouldn't work for us, obviously.
And it will happen about 4 or 5 times over the next 3 or 4 years, and then it won't happen again for another 18 years.
I am not coming back here in 18 years, so hopefully we'll get it tonight, but I guess we've got options.
But this is what Mission Possible is all about. It's, you know, earlier in the show we saw James McCormick saying how important personal projects were and having a reason to go out and take photos. You know, if we didn't have this as a challenge, then we wouldn't be here today, we wouldn't be out taking photos, but it's got us out and it's given us a reason to get out of the house.
We've learnt a few things.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, that's the key. I mean, as long as we see where the moon is, even if it's over there, then we're in trouble. If it's over there, then we're all right. So let's get this all set up. Right, so we'll put this on here. Right, so put the camera on the back. Is that the moon up there now, just above the tree?
No, surely not. It's too early, isn't it?
Well, I don't know, because it's all guesswork, but it's hard to tell because there's too much cloud there, but it looks suspiciously round and white. So I'm going to manually focus this because I don't trust it to get it as sharp as my eyes can get it. But see that heat haze?
Is that heat haze?
Yeah, just even though it's 1 degree, still the atmosphere moving.
At least it's not windy like it was.
Well, if it was windy, then that would be doing that. So. Okay, that is the moon. Look, just up to the right.
Oh my!
So we need to move quickly.
Okay.
We need to go down there, and then we've got it behind the tree. Right, so we failed at this time because we can't go any closer than this, because as we know from last time, as we go that way, you lose the tree.
Yeah.
And so we can't get any closer, and we need to get closer to get the tree higher. But what we can do is, if we look at this, we can work out exactly where that moon is at the moment. So The time is exactly 4 o'clock.
We're back on the photographer's ephemeris.
Yep. So at the moment the moon's at 61.7 degrees.
Yeah.
So we need it at, I don't know, 60 or 59 degrees. And it's saying that it's 8 degrees above the horizon. Well, it's probably 2 degrees above that tree right now, so we need it to be, let's say, 5.5 degrees. So remember that 5.5 degrees at 59 degrees.
5.5, 59.
That'll give us the right bearings on that tree.
So it was worth coming down anyway.
Yep, so we've learnt a lesson. We've got our photo here, but the moon's not in the right place. It was tracking over the top of the tree. My concern is that it was going to come underneath the tree, in which case we wouldn't have been able to do much about it, but the fact that it's going over the top of the tree, that gives us more opportunities.
So we just need to check back with those different numbers and see when the next date's going to be.
Well, the next date is actually tomorrow, but we know that the weather's not going to be good, so there's no point in coming here tomorrow. So February the 9th, I think, is the next time. So for now, pizza.
Brilliant idea. Let's go. So it's a case of patience and persistence for another few weeks, possibly even another few years. I must admit though, I am enjoying the challenge and learning a lot in the process. If we've inspired you to undertake your own personal Mission Possible projects, feel free to get in touch and let us know the details. You never know, we might even come along and film you. Now, if you watched our last show before the competition deadline of the 12th of January, you may have entered to win this filter set. These are the filters that all of our experts have in their own bags, and so they're well worth having. We had hundreds of entries to the competition, but there can only be one winner, and so I printed out all the names, and the only fair way I could think of drawing this is to chuck a dart at them. So I've been having a wee bit of target practice, and I'm going to shut my eyes just so this is totally fair. I am a rubbish shot, so let's see if we can do this. Oh, she hits it. Congratulations to Henk Jan something Bemer. I'm sorry, Henk Jan, I have done something to your name. Hopefully you can make it out there. We will be in touch though to make sure that these filters are on their way to you. If you're one of the hundreds of unlucky ones, next month in our March edition of Photography Online, we're actually giving away a carbon fibre travel tripod from Kingjoy, again a brand all of our experts use, so do make sure to hit subscribe and the bell icon so you're notified as soon as that show is available. Speaking of next month's show, I am so looking forward to it because we are coming to you from the city of romance. It's Venice. I can see it now, drifting gently down a quiet canal, being serenaded by a handsome Italian guy, all while tucking into a tiramisu.
Ruth? Until next time, take good care, but most of all, take good photos. Ruth, they're only Italian.